welcome to the show for today. You are watching Perspectives, and I am host Alana McLaughlin. This morning, I have James Wilson Jr. here to discuss African American children's literature. We'll be discussing James' background, faith, education, and ultimately the impact that he seeks to leave on African American children through literature. James, thank you for joining me this morning.
Alana, thank you for having me. I'm most gracious that you allow me the opportunity to be here with you
I
today.
sure appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
And for this first segment, we're just going to talk about early James. Tell me about your childhood, kind of what early life looked like.
I had a pretty good childhood, I must say. I had the big three in my life, I should say. Unfortunately, I lost my father to gun violence before I was born. So my mother, my grandmother, and my grandfather, they were the big three in my life that I think that's probably the best experience I could have asked for in the absence of my father. So they were very serious about making sure that we were raised in an environment that was conducive to education and well-being, just our overall general well-being. So I had a pretty good childhood, decent. I did sports. Of course, I stayed in school and just, played outside. Kids don't play outside.
You're right. No, you're so right. Seriously.
Right, they don't play outside anymore. So I did a lot of that. So I had a very enriching and rewarding childhood.
Now, James, where'd you go to school?
Well, for kindergarten, I went to Kings Lane Elementary. I grew up in like the Bardo area. So I went to Kings Lane, and it was weird back then. It was kindergarten, then like 5th and 6th grade. So I went there for kindergarten. Then for 1st and 2nd grade, I went to Jones. It's Jones Padilla now, but I went there. And then for 3rd and 4th grade, I went to Morney Elementary. It's in Jolton, Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
Morney's closed now, though. Yeah, it was a long time. It was like 96, 97. You know what I'm saying?
Ain't that the devil's elbow? We love Johnson.
Right. So I was there for 3rd, 4th grade. Then 5th through 8th grade, I went to Meigs Magnet School. And then for high school, I went to Hillsborough. And college, I went to the best college in the world, best HBCU. Tennessee State
University, the one and only. Now, James, I'm going to make a small interjection. I've actually had like 3 guests just today who went to Meigs, and I've asked them all this question. Who'd you have for science?
I had, my most memorable teachers were 6th grade with Miss Shementi and 7th grade, Mr. Haney.
Mr. Haney's my uncle.
See, tell Mr. One time I'm going to tell you, me and Mr. Haney had a very unique, a very different relationship. Let me tell you, I used to goof off in his class, but Mr. Haney saw some stuff in me I didn't see. And one thing I will give Mr. Haney credit for is he made me accountable. And I remember one time I did something, I just wasn't even trying. He said, he stopped the class, took me aside, he said, call your mama. And he made me call my mama. My mama was a park ranger at the time. She see this, she gonna be mad I said it. But she was a park ranger at the time, and he made me call my mama in the field and explain to her why I didn't do my work. I told him I just didn't feel like doing it. So anyway, I hold Mr. Haney near and dear to my heart.
And what's crazy is I hold your mom near, Mr. Haney too, but your mom is one of a kind. She is very known. Your mom is Joy Kimbrough.
She is.
And anybody in Nashville watching this, I don't need to explain who Joy Kimbrough is. She is pivotal in our community. She is a one-of-a-kind woman, and God, I hope she sees this episode, because seriously, the way that Haney has made an impact on you, she has made that impact on me. And that really segues us into high school. Kind of tell me about your high school experiences.
So high school was nice, it was cool. I went to Hillsborough High School, shout out to Hillsborough. And I went there all 4 years, and just typical student, I played sports. Football was my main thing. We won the state championship in 2003. So shout out to all those guys. I got love for all of them. But yeah, high school, it kind of exposed me to a different demographic of our people. And so from there, I made a lot of lifelong friends who I'm still able to say are my friends to this very day. So I had a very good experience with Hillsborough, and that was kind of like my jump starting into manhood, so to speak.
And to kind of wrap this first segment, just tell me about those early years at TSU. You're a young man, you're a young black man. This is usually most kids' first time being free.
Right.
We're at like one of the most fun schools in Tennessee, if not the most fun. So just tell me, Lord, how you navigated those early TSU years.
Listen, they don't give you a manual how to navigate that. So a lot of that was on the fly, but TSU I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. And I have a daughter now. She's 16. She's about to be 16. And I've been telling her, like, you know, TSU is one of these that you gonna consider. You know, even though we live in Atlanta, like TSU, you got a legacy there. You know what I'm saying? But TSU was wonderful. I started out playing football there, then I quit because I realized, to me, it wasn't worth it to do it if I didn't feel like I was going to the NFL. So, but that was still an experience as well. But
and James, I hate to cut you off, but we're going to pick back up in our second segment about those TSU experiences leading into the establishment of Mama Ruby's Bookshelf and all the other amazing things you've done for children in Tennessee. And I encourage our viewers to tune into the second segment of Perspectives, where James and I will be discussing African-American literature for children. The second segment of the show for today. For viewers just tuning in, I am Alana McLaughlin, and you are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I have James Wilson Jr. here to discuss his faith, background, education, and ultimately the impact of African-American literature in children. We talked in our first segment about his early education experiences at Meigs Middle School, up through Hillsborough High School, and on to Tennessee State University. And we left off in that first segment just discussing those early years as an adolescent trying to navigate college, and we're going to pick back up on just those TSU years. And it don't come with a manual.
No.
It doesn't come with it. But now you tell me just how you just navigated through. I know you talked about football. We'll pick back up from there.
Yeah, well, my football journey there was short. And we talking about like one semester, and I was through with it. But shout out to them, and I'm. It looks like the program is in good hands now. So I wish them the best. But basically, TSU was my first introduction to African studies, and that wasn't a major of mine. I sometimes regret that I wish I would have made it a minor or a major, but that was my introduction to Pan-Africanism. And I had a professor by the name of Manana Bella, and there was another professor, I can't pronounce his whole name, I think it was like Aid, but those two professors there are what really ignited my curiosity and determination to create content for African children and stuff. But that was my probably most rewarding experience in being there. And then, of course, going on to graduate and so forth. But yeah, TSU was the best. I think that's the best collegiate experience anybody could ever have, you know?
And I agree, as another product of Tennessee State University. Boy, do I agree. And, you know, I was thinking, as you were saying your first experiences with Pan-Africanism, mine were with Dr. Madu from Tennessee State University. Other professors like Dr. Lillard, Cupid Poe, these are the professors that sat with my grandfather in this very studio. And I would listen to them, you know, starting at age 6 or 7, I listened to them discuss Africa, the motherland, discuss our people, the kings and queens in our history. And I remember just being so fascinated because this is a step away from what we see in our history books. This isn't chains and bondage and lynching. This is beauty, this is gold. And so I want you to tell me kind of, once you learn it is Pan-African, kind of tell me what Pan-Africanism means to you.
Pan-Africanism means, theoretically, Pan-Africanism is the only for sure way to go. And I must preface this before talking about Pan-Africanism. Again, with TSU, let me give a shout out to Dr. Jerry Hill. She's not there anymore, but she was an influential professor of mine. But when it comes to Pan-Africanism, it's the global unity of African people all around the world. Blacks here in America, blacks in Brazil, blacks on the continent of Africa, Haiti, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, and so forth. And it's an ideal that I would say they purposely keep us away from exploring. And it's something that we need to explore when we're younger. And the thing about Pan-Africanism, let me say this too. I want to back up.
You go. This your show. You go. I'm serious.
When you were talking about my early experiences at TSU, I wanted to go back to my mother. She set the stage for me to go the route that I'm going. When I was young, when I was at Kings Lane Elementary, when I was just in kindergarten, this was '92. So you weren't even around.
I don't want to even thought of.
You weren't even around. But look, but she took me out of school and took me to go see the movie Malcolm X, starring Denzel. That was I didn't know what that meant at that time, but I knew it had to be important for her to come pull me out of class. And I remember the movie was so long it had an intermission. But I knew in watching that movie, even at 5 years old, I knew this is a strong black man and this is important. And she was setting the stage because I didn't have a father. I had my grandfather who definitely stepped up, and my uncle too. But she wanted me to instill and create a standard of a strong black man in my life. So fast forward to TSU in those years, right before I started TSU, my mama made me watch a a program with Minister Farrakhan, and she wanted me to see here's another black man with a strong voice. She wanted me to have that fundamentally so that I would know how to navigate through life as a black man. So I had to give her a lot of credit, and that's what helped me be so accepting of what I learned at TSU.
And you know, I've had a similar experience both at home and through TSU. You know, my grandfather, Dr. Haney, he was an Africana Studies and history professor from, God, about 1982, before that, Lord, about 1970 to 2014.
Right.
So he was in that history department, and he drilled it in me. I can remember him reading me Alex Haley's, you know, Malcolm X, the biography. I can remember him taking me to see just different movies, The Birth of a Nation, things like that. And I remember half the time I'd be scared, confused, sad, but now as an adult African-American woman, especially in Tennessee, I look back on that and I say thank you for teaching me who I am and who I can be. And so now I want to talk about, now that you've established yourself, you're learning these great things, you have this black pride inside of you. I want to talk about Mama Ruby's Bookshelf.
Mama Ruby's Bookshelf.
Explain the idea and then the birth of Mama Ruby's Bookshelf.
Yes, so back in late 2018, I decided to start writing children's books. But and my first book is, I know we'll get into it, it's on Marcus Garvey. And there's not a lot of African-centered content for black children. And my grandmother, Ruby Smith, who's an ancestor now, she passed 2020, August 12, 2020. But she is the one that made sure that myself, my sisters, my cousins, there was always an educational tone set around the house. It was always bookshelves full of books. And if you're not outside playing, come in here and read something, do something constructive. So when I decided to do that, it was only fitting for me to name that after her. Because if it wasn't for Mama Ruby, I don't know where me and many of my family members would be. So I had to name that after her. That was an old her. And thank God she was able to see one of the books before she passed. So yeah, I had to name that after her. It was a blessing.
Nate, tell me the establishment of Mama Ruby's Bookshelf, like the technicality of it.
It's so I'm doing what many would call self-publishing, but it's basically I oversee the entire process of the production of the book. I'm writing the book, getting it copyrighted, getting the ISBN, sending it to the Library of Congress, getting it printed, overseeing that whole ordeal. Then getting it shipped. I deal with China, so they ship. I have to oversee that process, getting it from China to actually packaging it up and distributing it to the customers who want the book. So
how did you learn how to do all this?
I had to learn on the fly. You learn on my own, but it's more rewarding that way. Because I'm gonna tell you, when you're doing something like that you're serious about, and what I'm doing is for our children, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love the fact that I'm blessed to be able to put my hands on it and have my hands on every single part of the process. And hopefully more young black authors will deploy that. We have to have our hands on the production of our content.
I know. So, I mean, because why can't we have a Harper's Collins, or you know, why can't we have those Scholastic type companies? And you're right, we should have our hands in that. And now, James, I want to talk to kind of wrap this second segment. Tell me about writing your first book.
Man, it was something. I was at work, and I was and I work overnight. I was working overnight at the time, and I was looking for a book on Marcus Garvey for my children. I have 2 children, and so I was looking. I'm like, I don't see any, and the ones that I did see, I didn't see any. Let me just say that.
And I feel you, James. And James, in our final segment, we're going to come back just talking about the lack of resources for our African-American children, especially in terms of literacy. And I encourage our viewers to tune into the final segment of Perspectives, where James and I will be discussing African-American children's literature. Welcome to the final segment of the show for today. For viewers just tuning in, I am Alana McLaughlin, and you are watching Perspectives. This morning on the show, I have James Wilson Jr. here to discuss his background, education, faith, and ultimately African-American children's literature and the impact that he seeks to leave on black youth through literature. In our first 2 segments, we talked about James's upbringing and background, family experiences from Meigs Middle School to Hillsborough High School, ultimately to Tennessee State University, the Tennessee State University. And we left off in our second segment talking about just James's early experiences with looking for books that focused or even just touched on Pan-Africanism or just Africanism as a whole in children. And we're going to pick back up on that story. And James, I'm going to let you tell it. And we're going to start right back. You're looking for a book about Garvey.
Looking for a book about Garvey, couldn't find one. I already knew how to write. So I said, I'll write one. I was just messing with I'm just messing around at work. I'll just write one. I wrote it at work, and I read it to a good friend of mine, and she said, that's it. she teared up. So she was like, that's it. So from there, that was it. I want to say this. When it comes to black history, and a lot of times I say African history, when it comes to African history, what we have to remember is African history to the mind is just like fruits and vegetables and water are to the body. It's nutritious. You have to have it. If you're not eating your right amount of fruits, vegetables, drinking your water, you're gonna become malnourished. It's the same thing for your mind. Black children are oftentimes malnourished mentally because they're not being supplemented with black history, African history like they're supposed to. And so I understood that going back to TSU and my mama, I understood that has to be the foundation. It has to be introduced to them young. So I write this book on Marcus Garvey here. And the thing about Marcus Garvey is Marcus Garvey led the most successful demonstration of global African unity in world history. Hadn't been duplicated or replicated yet. And there's a reason why they don't talk and teach about Marcus Garvey in school. So I understood we have to put this in front of them early. You put a book about Marcus Garvey the way that I wrote about Marcus Garvey, you put that book in front of children. Today, when you ask most children what they want to be when they grow up, it's going to be, especially the boys, they want to be some type of ball player.
Basketball, football.
Ball player, YouTuber, rapper, singer. You see what I'm saying? You put Garvey in front of them, now they're talking about, I might want to go into oceanography. What about shipbuilding? What about pilot? What about industrial engineering and so forth? You have to put these type of figures in front of them, figures who demonstrated not just unity in a symbolic form, but unity as far as it goes culturally, historically, economically, and socially. You have to put those in front of them. So that's what led me to my first book on Marcus Garvey. My second book, which is actually on the red, black, and green colors that Marcus Garvey introduced, this again re-emphasizes Pan-Africanism. And these colors, a lot of times we see them during Black History Month and so forth, but these are colors that are symbolic in us and a cry for the unity of African people around the world. African people, like I said, in Africa, here in America, Chile, Mexico, Brazil, Dominican Republic, wherever they are, we're all under this one banner. And as Africa rises, I learned this TSU from Dr. Banana Belly, as Africa rises, so do we. So these two books, those first two books, they're showing our children that they belong to something bigger than themselves, and they make it realistic to our children, because children of other groups understand this. Even though we have Mexican children here, Asian children here, European children here, they understand that they belong to Mexico first, they belong to China first, they belong to Japan first, and so forth. Yeah. African children have to understand that we belong to a geography first too, called Africa, and we have to reattach ourselves to it. The final book, which is my newest book, is Teach Me About Malcolm. Like earlier I told you, Mama pulled me out of kindergarten to go take me to see Malcolm X. I never forgot that. As I become older, and when you read, like you were talking about Dr. Haney, when you all talk about the autobiography of Malcolm X, every person in the world can relate to Malcolm X. And the one thing about Malcolm, especially for our children, and especially the boys, I talk a lot about the boys, here is a symbol, the epitome of self-discipline and transformation. And I hone in on discipline because discipline for black boys is one of the key factors that determines where they will go in life. And the lack of discipline is reflective in the social challenges that many of them face. Here in America, in Brazil, in Zimbabwe, it doesn't matter. We all have a lot of the same problems. So that's why I decided to write about Malcolm. When you teach our boys and our children about Malcolm early, you won't see our boys growing up calling one another ops, calling and regarding one another like they're filth and trash. They'll look at them as brothers and sisters. Our boys won't be calling our young sisters out of their name. They'll regard them as sisters and relate to them as such. So we have to, again, make sure that we're providing them content from our perspectives. Make sure we provide them content from our perspectives the right way so that they can function in this world and navigate the way that we need them to navigate, so that we can fulfill a destiny that's only right.
And James, I think it's real full circle that you just wrote this book about Malcolm, because you are doing the same work that his father did before he was murdered for it.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know, I think like one of the most gripping parts of the book, or even just Malcolm's entire story, is the fact that his father was doing the same things that we do nowadays, preaching, outreach. He wasn't fighting people, wasn't this and that, but he was going into those churches. He was speaking about the power of Africa, about the beauty that has been erased from our history and was killed for it. And I think that I'm honored to be able to sit on a platform and to be able to still rehash those same ideas, and we're still, you know, we're not being disrespectful, not racist, not xenophobic, but we are being just proud to be ourselves and proud to not only be African, but be American as well, because to be African American, you have to have come from Africa, your lineage has survived slavery, your lineage has survived civil rights, and while these are not the greatest things to experience, that is strength and resilience. Every black person just sitting here right now came from someone who came from somewhere else, who saw a lot of things. And I think that it's extremely powerful that we are still putting forth those right messages, Jay.
I want to say this real quick.
Say it.
It's a statement by the late, great Dr. John Henry Clark. He said that history should serve three functions. And I'm gonna say black history, especially about children. History should tell you who you were, who you are, and who you must become. And we have to remember that when we're approaching our children with our history, because our history is precious, our history is unique. Our children have to understand that we are the oldest people on the planet, which means that we have a very unique experience in the world. And therefore, as parents, grandparents, educators, aunts, uncles, we have to make sure that we educate them in a unique manner so that they can fulfill their destiny that is promised to them.
And James, what are just some of the ways that the community, before I even get into that, what's the future of James Wilson and of Mama Ruby's Bookshelf? What do you have planned?
So I'm continuing to write. I want to grow this, and eventually I want to get to a point, once I get financially to a certain point, I want to work with different writers and produce more and more African-centered content from different perspectives around the diaspora. Because like I said, we have to be the curators of our story, our history, culture, and so forth. So that's what I'm doing. Right now, my books are available online on my website, mrbookshelf.com. The M's like Mama, R like Ruby, bookshelf.com. I'm actually going to be having a book signing here on February the 17th at the Bordeaux Library, right on Clarksville Highway. Well, I'll be reading my books and doing an in-person signing. So I hope your viewers are able to get over there on February the 17th, that Saturday. It'll be from 11 to 1. And, you know, we can meet, congregate, there'll be some refreshments, but it's events like those that we have to cherish and make important, because you're not going to see too many authors come forth who are giving the type of content that I am, that is for the betterment of our children and the future of African people.
Right. Now, James, to wrap up this final segment, how can people connect with you? Tell me your socials, tell me everything.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at James Writes 615. So James, James, then Writes like a pencil, WRITES 615. That's my handle for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X. And I'm on YouTube under Black Top 5. It's Black Top, and then 5 is spelled out with the number 5, then IVE.
Okay.
You can see me on there as well. I've conducted a few interviews, and some of my content is on there as well. And then, my website as well, again, one more time, mrbookshelf.com. You can always reach me on there, send me a message, and I'll get back with you.
And James, I just want to thank you for what you're doing for the community, and thank you for just taking the time out to just come share your perspective. I appreciate you more than you know, and I know our viewers feel the same.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, just thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share one more perspective. Good morning.